On May 16, 2025, Antonio Brown would attend a celebrity boxing event in Miami's Little Haiti neighborhood. Everything was going okay until there was some kind of commotion, and all of a sudden, an arrest warrant came on June 11, 2025, and momentarily, Antonio Brown was apprehended. He was then let out, and then next thing you know, he was gone, like literally gone. And Antonio Brown was out and about across the world trolling people until this happened.
Antonio Brown got picked up for an attempted murder, and if you've seen that surveillance video, then you know that nigga's beyond cooked. I knew his ass was cooked back when this shit first happened, because that was the night where he did the shit, and then they arrested him on the spot, but then they let him go off self-defense, and then he went on Aiden Ross's stream. But the same night they released him, they released that footage. And on that footage, you could clearly see him running down and shooting at him. That is not self-defense. That is not self-defense in the slightest. Like, the only way I could see him coming up out of this is because he's got money and he's a celebrity.
We all understand how Antonio Brown's career ended, and it wasn't nice. You know, he quit the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, walking off the field with no shirt on, flipping off people and everything like that. But still, he was productive. He was still an elite wide receiver. Everybody's talking about his talent and what he could have been. What if this and what if that? But most people look at Antonio Brown's change in his career after this hit by Vontaze Burfict in the 2016 playoff game against the Bengals. Now, before that hit, Antonio Brown was talking like this.
Ben Roethlisberger said this week, you just might be the best receiver he has ever played with. How much did you pay him to get that out of him?
Man, I paid him a lot.
And then after that hit, he was talking like this.
So you being an athlete that made millions and millions of dollars, why do most athletes choose white women?
Because 50% of white women in college. There's a higher rate of white women in college than black women. So it's like if you're a professional, if you're a college player, you're going to majority be in the class with what type of woman?
A lot of people want to say Antonio Brown had CTE, which stands for Chronic Traumatic Encephalopathy. This is a progressive brain disease caused by repeated head injuries that can lead to cognitive, mood, and behavioral problems. And if you look at Antonio Brown's career from 2010 to 2014, he had no problems, no real issues out there. He was one of the hardest working, most focused players in the league. He went from nothing to superstar. I believe he played at Central Michigan. He was undersized. He had an underdog mentality. He was a 6th round pick. Now, the production on the field was elite. Right before the hit in 2015, he had 136 catches for 1,834 yards and 10 touchdowns, and he had like 3 years of playing at that level. I mean, he was awesome. Then after the hit, in 2016, he had 106 catches. He had 101 catches in 2017. 2018, he had 104 catches and he had 15 touchdowns. So even after the hit, he was still playing at the highest level. So was the CTE or the head-to-helmet hits the real issue? To me, that wasn't the real issue. First of all, Antonio Brown was born in Miami, Florida. His father, Eddie Brown, was one of the greatest Arena Football League receivers ever. His mother, Adrienne Moss, raised Antonio and his younger brother, Desmond. But his home life was far from stable. His parents split up when he was around 18 years old, and his mom remarried. Antonio did not get along with the stepfather, and he was eventually kicked out of the house. For several years as a teenager, he was homeless. He was sleeping on people's couches and in stadium bleachers and everything. Like, every day was survival, okay? Now, he did go to Miami Norland High School. He was a standout athlete, but he couldn't keep his grades up. He had no home, no limited support, had basically shady living arrangements, and college coaches avoided him because of the grades and off-the-field instability. He went to a prep school in North Carolina, but was expelled before finishing the program. What saved him is that he walked on at Central Michigan University as a wide receiver and return specialist. We all know how that went. He played 3 years there, got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the rest was history. The reality is that Antonio Brown's career was kind of over before it started, because a lot of black men do grow up like this, and some may be able to stay focused and make a career out of it. But then the reality is Antonio Brown is a person that kind of craves structure and rejects authority. He needed love, but expects betrayal. He earns everything, but fears losing again. I mean, this is what you see with Antonio Brown. He's destroyed almost every relationship. The Steelers, Tom Brady, you know, Keisha Cole. He's just that kind of guy, and he self-imploded. But he self-imploded because the world self-imploded on him. Now, this is no excuse for him to be how he is. I get it. But the main thing is that for a lot of black men that go around with the hurt and the pain that they have, at certain points, these guys can snap, okay? Just like anybody else. And when you are dealt a bad hand like Antonio Brown, I mean, people just can't say, well, just get over it, all right? You'll be okay. You know, everything will be fine. No, this is a guy that has trust issues, okay? This is a guy who feels like don't nobody love him. And one of the reasons why he probably can't have relationships with people or women is because, you know, he doesn't trust anybody, you know? And so now this is why he's acting up. And it's not just the CTE, it's a lot of black men out there, you know, that are in the same situations that Antonio Brown. Now, luckily, you know, I've had my own demons in my own life, but thankfully, you know, my mom was there, you know, I had a good supportive grandma. I had a good supportive system, you know, in my neighborhood and my church. So I was lucky, and maybe you were lucky, but not every black man is lucky like this. And we got to understand that as black men, if we're not able to get rid of those issues, that it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how many women you have. It doesn't matter how successful you're going to be. You're going to implode and give it up anyway. All right. There's so many black men out there, and you look at them and you're like, damn, man, you know, he had everything popping. Like, how did he end up like that? He just gave it all away because he thought that having that level of success, that level of fame, that level of, you know, doing well, you know, that would make him happy. And ultimately, it did make him happy to a certain degree, but it's not all that makes somebody happy. And as I'm getting older in life, I realize that some of the things that have happened to me, you know, out of my control, I have to make peace with that. You know what I mean? Not just for myself, but just so I don't mess up somebody else's life. And again, you know, as a black man, just opening up about whatever issues that I did have. I mean, a lot of times people just look at you and what they can get from you, you know, especially if you're successful. If you can somehow turn your pain into an extreme work ethic like Antonio Brown, and that's what a lot of black men do. Men in general, you know, you've been hurt in your life, you don't trust anybody, and then you just become like super focused and working extremely hard, trying to prove everybody wrong. And, you know, you just do these things and be focused because that focus is basically because you want everybody to know that you made it without them, even though they was hating on you. And that it is good to redirect that energy, but it's gonna come time where those demons are gonna come back, and you can only redirect that energy for so long. Like what happens when you get out of the NFL, you know, like if you don't have a healthy base to go from, those problems are still going to be there. And this is what you see with some guys, and you know, they get out of the league, you know, they go broke, you know, these are things that happen. So ultimately, like I said, nobody's gonna help us with our own issues and what's happened to us, but we gotta find ways to be able to say, listen, this is something that hurt me as a man. My mom rejected me. This is something that hurt me as a person. I was rejected, okay? But that doesn't mean that everybody else is going to treat me in the same way. I gotta be able to deal with my hurt and my pain just so that I don't go crazy. And I think that's exactly what Antonio Brown is. He was a ticking time bomb, even from his youth. I mean, the CTE, it just added to the story, but those demons he just couldn't get away from. And I think that if Antonio Brown, the best thing for him to be right now is in prison. Like if he is going to be out on the streets, he might hurt somebody else or hurt himself, you know? And my heart goes out to, you know, to him. You know, obviously he did a really bad thing, and you know, yeah, he has to take accountability for that. But again, you know, this is a guy that everybody, there are certain guys who can overcome this, and there are certain guys who can't. And obviously, he's a guy that couldn't do it. So guys, what do you think? It's your boy O'Shea Dude Jackson back at it again with another episode of The Celebrity Junk. I appreciate you for all they do. Subscribe to the bell. We're out.